This is Kari Kim, and you're listening to the Girl Mom Podcast. Welcome, friends, to the Girl Mom Podcast. This is Kari Kim, your host. Today's topic is one that's close to my heart because I see how common the phenomenon is. When our kids are little, kindness often gets rewarded. Kind kids are the ones we moms want to have over at our house. Kind kids are usually also the ones who make friends easily in preschool and elementary school. They often get the awards at school and have a wide variety of friends. But when middle school comes around, you start to see a microcosm of the real world, and kindness often gets overlooked. In many schools, the kindest girls can fall through the cracks. They're friends with everyone and they float from group to group, but they don't always have a firm place of belonging. They may be forgotten or left out as many people focus their attention on being connected to the movers and shakers of the grade, or just trying to rise to the top of the social food chain. And what often happens as a result is that these kind girls wonder what is wrong with them. Their parents often wonder this too, and sometimes feel left out as well, as the parents that they raise their daughters with no longer include them in activities. It's a tough place to be, but let me assure you, it does not last forever. As kids grow up and mature, and especially as they go to college, many will decide that kindness is the number one quality they want in a friend. Once you've been burned by a mean friend, you see why kindness matters, and you promise yourself that you're going to choose better going forward. So, while kindness may not be appreciated or rewarded in middle school or even high school, it will help your daughter thrive long term. It'll also help her be at peace with herself and with God, and build lifelong friendships that have the ability to go the distance, lasting 30 or 40 years. Once again, I have my dear friend, Kim Anderson, a Nashville counselor, here with me to unpack this very important topic. My hope is that we bring you peace and build your confidence as you teach your child to be kind and also build strong character, even if it's not rewarded in their current season of life. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen and share it with friends. Also, make sure and join me and Kim in Nashville October 25th and 26th for our first retreat for moms called Moms with Impact, becoming the most influential voice in your teenager's life. We've got a great event planned, and we've got an amazing group of moms coming already. So we'd love for you to join us. If you sign up now until September 15th, you can get $100 off your ticket price by entering the code Nashville at checkout. As always, thanks for listening to this episode, and enjoy the show. Welcome back, Kim.
Well,
this is the episode that I thought I posted a couple of months ago, and I ended up having the wrong episode. So we're going to get it right.
We're going to do it.
That's right, because I know moms were really excited to listen to this, and then it was a repeat of something we'd already put out there. But that's okay. You know what? These things always come out in God's timing, and so whoever's listening to it, it'll be the perfect timing. And it's probably even better now that everybody's going back to school.
Yes.
This is a good back to school message.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, thank you for coming again. So, you and I both talk a lot about kindness. You and I both are parenting through the lens of having done it for over 20 years each. You're an official empty nester. How old is Luke?
Luke is 20.
20.
Yeah, and Kyla is 22.
22, yeah.
Stop and think.
Yeah, so my oldest, Ella's about to be 22, and then Sophie's, 19, 17, and 14. So we both have seen a lot in our parenting years, and then also just through the respective work that we do. And, I've always loved the saying, you can't go wrong doing what's right. Mm-hmm. And I just think kindness falls into that category. Absolutely. But it's really hard when you're in the thick of the trenches, especially your kids are going into middle school or they're entering the real world. And as we both know, I have a lot of new moms that are following me on Instagram or listening to the podcast. And I feel like the kind culture that maybe our kids enjoyed for a little bit longer into elementary school is not always the case now. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing about a lot of things, really hurtful things happening earlier and earlier. And just as that window of childhood, that innocence seems to be getting smaller and smaller. Yeah. These kids are up against some mean events or whatever at earlier ages. So I think this is a really important message for moms to hear.
Yeah, and it's excruciating being that mom.
Yes.
That is watching your kind child, right, be excluded, be left out, be picked on, you name it, right? But none of us would want to go back through middle school again.
No.
I don't know a single person who would say, hey, Can I go relive those years? Because it was wonderful.
Exactly.
Adolescence is just not for the faint of heart, and definitely adolescent parenting is not for the faint of heart. And like you said, it's happening younger and younger.
Yeah, and to that point, one of my daughters had a friend through middle school who she thrived in middle school, but elementary school just really, really struggled, in those years when it's usually not as much of a struggle. But I remember her mom telling me that when our daughters became friends, she's like, I'm just so thankful for this friendship. And she's like, we really struggled. And I'm like, how? Like, for me, my perspective as a mom, like, this child is adorable. Like, I was like, how was she not the most popular girl in the class? Like, you could just see it clearly. She was doing all the right things, great personality, just kind. But for whatever reason, just did not click with the people that she went to elementary school with. And so it wasn't until she went to a new school and found some new friends. But the mom was even like, my husband and I would even have conversations like, is there something we're not seeing? Yeah. And that's what I hear about a lot from moms is that, of course, at first you're just telling your child, just keep doing the right thing. But then sometimes there comes a point where nothing's happening and nothing's changing. And you do start to wonder, is something wrong with my child? And in this case, in so many cases, there's not. Sometimes there is. Sometimes the child just, they all need to learn some social skills. And there are things that are hurting them in their relationships. But sometimes they're not doing anything wrong. They're doing it right, and they're just in the wrong environment.
Yeah.
So.
And the dynamics are so unique. You just never know what, if you think of it like a cohort, so to speak.
Yes.
Right? Each class or each grade or whatnot. And, when you get certain personalities together, things just shift in a different direction. And you could have a child that would thrive in one cohort, but then they're in another cohort, and those personalities, maybe bigger personalities, stronger personalities.
Right.
When we think of the proverbial queen bee, those type of dynamics can just take such a different turn.
Yes, yeah. And we talk about that, and it's so interesting. That just goes back to class dynamics. And I actually was just writing about this in a new book that I'm working on. But you don't know that when your child is born. You don't know. And I remember even when I was trying to get pregnant, and, of course, it's always later. When you're trying to get pregnant, it always comes later than you wanted it. But I remember a friend ahead of me telling me, you'll just see, like, once you have a baby, once you're pregnant, just everything is just so in God's timing, even like the class that they land in. And I thought about that, like, I wanted to have Ella a year in advance, but of course then it wouldn't have been Ella, it would have been another baby. But even like I love the class that she landed in, and I was so thankful that it didn't come a year earlier. Just everything worked. In like just class dynamics, like I said, my daughter who's a senior this year in high school, we could see it, and so many times with the class dynamic, you can see it in kindergarten. Like I can look back and see.
Watch and see.
I could have told you in kindergarten what the class dynamic would be when these kids were all seniors in high school. Like you can see it if you just know. But even then, like her class was just something special. And I mean, I remember, in kindergarten, they could hear about two friends going to a concert together or doing something, and they did not fall apart. Like they were so secure in their friendships, and they let their friends have other friends, and it was just easy. And I know that is not typical because I've seen the opposite. And so it was just interesting when that grade, I would talk to moms at the other elementary schools. We have 4 in our community, and they would tell me that their overall class dynamic was the same. And so we knew, we were like, this is just going to be a sweet class. And they've been so sweet. And I mean, who knows, the other shoe could drop tomorrow. You never know what's going to happen with kids. But I'm very thankful that is possible, to see that a kind dynamic in a class. But sometimes, like you said, that's not the case. And your child, to not get eaten alive, they need some social skills. And they, how do you stay kind, but also be strong and tough it out in those environments that might not be conducive to kindness.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard because as moms, if our kids are hurting, we're hurting. It's impossible to not feel the pain, of watching your child struggle. But the question is, how do we handle it, right? Because if we hurt because our kids are falling through the cracks, then they hurt if we don't handle it the right way.
Yes.
Right? And so if they feel our dysregulation from it, they feel our pain, then all of a sudden that might be a bigger thing. It might be that they're fine.
Right.
I mean, I remember one time I was talking with a group of women, and we were talking about extroverts versus introverts. And this extroverted mom went to pick her introverted son up at Lego Robotics Club after school, and she walked in, and he was sitting working by himself. And immediately, as an extrovert, she panicked, right? She's like, what? Why is he sitting by himself? Did the other kids reject him? Did they tell him he couldn't sit with them? Do they not like him?
Oh, that's so funny.
Right? And they got in the car, and what did she do? Which is what all of us moms do, right? The overparent, she drilled him, right? What happened? What, la, 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 you know? And she put her anxiety on him about the circumstance. And then in his security, you were just talking about security, in his security, he said, no. He goes, Mom, I just really wanted to think about what I was doing, and I didn't want to get distracted, and I had a vision for my project that I was building, and I just needed a little space to be able to do it, right?
Wow.
And so if she is, I'm just saying as moms, right, if we drive with our own anxiety about the circumstance, we might be putting it on our kids.
Right.
When they don't have that anxiety themselves, right?
Yeah,
so we just need to be mindful.
That is so good. I know, and just knowing that God wired them that way.
Yes,
and
yes.
We don't need a world full of extroverts.
Oh, gosh, we've got plenty.
We got plenty. And we don't need a world full of introverts. We'd never leave our houses.
Right.
So what do we want to tell moms, just, as far as when kind girls fall through the cracks? And it could be, some of you listening to this, it might never happen. Like, my daughters have found some kind friends. I'm like, you can always find at least one or two kind people. Like, they found kind friends in junior high, in high school, in college. I think the older they get, the more appreciated it becomes and the more common it becomes. Obviously, you have people that go in the other direction too, but I do feel like long term it pays off. But anyway, I think the first thing we talked about helping your daughter, especially when kind girls fall through the cracks, is just reminding her and just knowing in our own mom heads that kind people are the ones who thrive long term. And that's what we're parenting for. It's not short-term satisfaction, not short-term invitations to all the cool parties. You're parenting for the long term. You're parenting character. And it's so against the grain of our society where we want, you look on TV and there's a home makeover, the whole house is renovated in 6 weeks, and they've lost 50 pounds in 6 weeks. These quick renovations, quick makeovers. We have this idea that things should happen quickly. But, again, you can't go wrong doing what's right. And sometimes, you're not going to thrive in every season. And sometimes our kids won't thrive in every season, especially if they are choosing kindness. And that's okay, because they're going to attract what they are.
Well, I think part of that is normalizing exclusion for them, and this generation of parents has it so much more difficult than our generation of parents had it, because let's be honest, we didn't know if we weren't invited to things. We just weren't there. We might hear about it at the lunch table the next day, right? But it wasn't in our face. Whereas now these kids, if they're on, if they're at the age where they're on social media, which I recommend they're not until at least 16, but if they are, they see it. They see that they all got together at someone's house. Or not only that, they see it on, say they're older and they've got snap maps or, GPS tracking. They now know that all the friends are hanging out, at Susie's house, and they're not there, and that they weren't invited. And so it's casting that vision. It's helping them get clear about where they're going, what that, like you said, when we parent for the long game, who do they want to be in college? What kind of friends do they want to have? And letting them know, that they are not going to be everybody's favorite person, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I just I think we can't emphasize that enough. Just, you're going to attract who you are. And if you look at it, especially in the middle school, you start to see it. The kind people are going to attract kind friends. If you're mean, you're going to attract mean friends. Strong will is going to attract strong will friends. Snarky will attract snarky friends. So truly, the way to find kind friends is to first have that kind heart yourself. And, I think that our kids can't hear it enough or know enough that, if somebody chooses to be mean, it's going to come back to them. Not only is God cannot bless a lifestyle where we're living against his design for us. Like, he just can't bless that path. And a lot of kids, a lot of girls, I think, end up in mean friend groups, and they just have to be mean to survive.
Well, you think about the movie Mean Girls, right? Which is based on the fantastic book Queen Bees and Wannabes by Rosalind Wiseman. Highly recommend it. And she so beautifully illustrates this raft concept. And we've got these rafts in middle school, and I use this a lot when I'm working with teen clients or adolescent clients. It's like, who's on your raft, and are they safe friends? because a lot of those rafts, you're going to get pushed off the minute that you look the wrong way, right?
Right.
And,
there's no security.
Yeah, and we know just even from Regina George, I think is her name, the queen bee in Mean Girls, right? The queen bee is at the top of the hive, but she is paranoid and super anxious that she's going to get pushed off by somebody else who wants to take her place, right? So while it can feel desirable for a lot of these young girls, I want to be in that friend group.
From the outside
looking
yes,
in.
you don't know the drama.
You do not know the drama.
Yes.
You do not know the drama that is going on.
Right.
And the anxiety that those girls are feeling because they know that they're going to get pushed off really quickly. And so what I really like to do is encourage, kids this age to work with a coach, like a life coach, to help them figure out their strengths, their personality, their purpose, their passion, their values, so that they can stand in confidence as they're growing, going, I know who I am. And it may not look like that, but this is a short season. I love getting kids out on college tours early in high school for that same reason. If they're struggling, like, look, here's the next chapter. Look at all these people that you get to be around, right? You're not stuck on that raft. That high school raft is short-lived.
Right.
But this is where you're going, and you get to start fresh with a whole sea of new people.
Right. And it is so true. I hear a lot of girls now that I can't wait to go to college because they don't have good friendships in high school. And obviously we don't want to romanticize college because it's going to have its own ups and downs.
Yes.
And as my husband tells our girls, like, any organization, anything you're part of is going to be a microcosm of the real world. There
will be mean people there too.
There will be,
yep.
Whether it's fraternity or sorority, like, it's going to be a microcosm. Now, certain places are going to have a larger percentage of a certain personality. Every group has its own culture, its own mindset. So you might have a certain organization with more kind people than mean people. And, typically kindness is going to rule the roost there. But obviously there are a lot of different situations. But going back to the point of the life raft and how there's, if somebody's in the wrong friend group, choosing, just to have a place, if they don't want to fall through the cracks, they are willing to sacrifice their values and their morals to have friends because they'd rather have mean friends than no friends. A story I heard recently, it was a girl in college that she was, one night just yelling at this other girl. They were kind of going at it back and forth. And all of a sudden, the girl who started it just burst into tears. And she's like, I hate how mean I've become. It just, it hit her. And she admitted something, but she just had ended up in a really mean friend group in her sorority. And she just, that's what it took to survive. But, like, she wasn't at peace with that. And so if there's anybody listening to this, like, that is a gift from God. I'm like, that tension, that means that God's in your heart. If he's not in your heart, if you can do that and not feel any guilt or remorse, then that means God's spirit is not alive in you. Like, that's a gift when you feel that guilt or that remorse, that doesn't feel good. So that's something to tune in to and to know that is a gift and something we need to keep us on our better path. And then also, like we said, like, the girls who choose the main path, like, they're going to get what they have coming. Yeah. And, I've seen girls fall through the cracks during rush because, you hear about a girl's reputation, and yes, it can be your reputation with boys, but a girl's reputation and how she treats people is just as important. And it follows you.
It follows you.
It follows you, and people talk. And I've even heard of girls that had a great resume and a great reputation and went into rush doing really well, but were not very kind to some people at certain houses during rush, and then get dropped because the sorority presidents talked. You just don't know, and that's not the motive. You're not being kind to try to get into the best sorority, the sorority of your dreams or whatever, or to get a guy. But I know people too that a girl started dating a guy, and then he hears how mean she is, and he drops her. That your reputation is going to catch up with you.
Yes.
And so that's what you have to know. If you are falling through the cracks and somebody else is being mean to you, like, you don't have to retaliate. Like, they will dig their own grave. Yeah. And they'll get what they have coming. Sometimes it's they meet somebody that's meaner than them. Yeah. And they get it back 10 times worse.
Yeah. It's a lot of drama, right?
Yes,
and
a lot of drama.
That's the other thing, part of that, casting a vision and helping them see beyond. It's, encouraging them to avoid that drama, because it's not fun. And the other thing I just want to say on this, not only that, is that one of the things that we did is we prayed a lot for wise people to be in our kids' lives outside of that cohort, right?
Yes.
That school, that team, whatever it was. The more that I find that we can get our kids plugged in church youth groups and
Yes.
with wise other influences in their life, the less pressure that cohort feels when they're getting excluded, right?
Yes.
They've got other areas to compensate for it.
Yes, I was going to say that too. And I tell moms that, if your daughter is struggling, think back to the hardest or darkest seasons of your life. If she's really struggling, get her plugged into Young Life. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
Our daughters were both Young Life leaders at Auburn. That is the best organization.
Yeah.
Everywhere I travel that has Young Life, I can't tell you how many people are like, our Young Life chapter is really strong here. It's just a universally strong program. And especially if your child is in a lonely season, their Young Life leader could be pivotal in that season, just somebody to love them. You're just trying to find good influences, godly voices, and it might be somebody that's older than them. It might be a parent, but I tell parents, look back in the hardest seasons of your life. It wasn't 20 friends who got you through it. It was usually my grandmother, my best friend, my Young Life leader, my mom. It was usually one or two key people. And so if your daughter's struggling, if she is kind and she's falling through the cracks, she doesn't need this huge posse.
Yeah.
Right. One or two key influences besides you is huge.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think, too, on that note, as moms, we kind of need to check ourselves. And, like I was talking about the Lego robotics mom at the beginning, but if we're an extroverted mom that really thrived on our social connections as we were growing up, and our child is not having that same story, that can trigger, panic in us.
Right.
And we can push them too hard in that direction, right? Or the opposite, if we felt exclusion, right? If we felt that pain of exclusion growing up, and again, we see that happening to our child, it can also cause us to go into that panic where we're trying to fix it and we're trying to navigate it and manage it in a way that, again, puts pressure on them.
Yes.
And so that's where the coaches, all the other people that can come around and be positive influences are so helpful.
Yes, because I think that, like I said, if you're helping your child do the right thing, teaching her to be a good friend, teaching her kindness, all those things, she gets older. We've talked about this before. Sometimes people, they're just not going to appreciate kindness until they get burned by a mean friend.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. Middle school, what helps somebody thrive then can really come back and backfire on them later.
Yes.
So you just, sometimes they just have to go through hard things, but the other kids too, they're all learning on each other. And sometimes people have to have a mean experience to be like, oh, next time,
I'm not
making
again.
that mistake. It's kind of like
Exactly.
dating. Guys,
Yep.
you got one okay, I like this, but I am never settling for that again.
Yeah.
You have to have those bad experiences to know what you want. And that's why college can present such a great new opportunity. And so many kids I know that flew under the radar or maybe fell through the cracks a little bit in high school or junior high, they do great when they go to college, because if you're kind and you've been on that track, you're going to meet a lot more people who are on that track too. And you think about it, the last time they chose their friends in a new environment was probably middle school.
Yeah.
So you tend to make better choices at age 18 than you might have at 13.
Definitely.
You have a lot of experience to shape what you want in a friend. So I share that as encouragement, because I hear from so many moms, and so many of them are the moms and the daughters led Bible studies and small group studies with my books. And the mom felt so good as her daughter went to middle school because she just knew the girls and they were all so sweet and they just felt great about it. And then they go to middle school, and then her daughter is often the one that's getting left out. And then she's kind of getting a little bit left out by the parents, and she's thinking, I invested in all of your daughters. It's just
it's hard.
It's a very common dynamic, and we don't ever know the full story of what's going on. But I'm just sharing this for those moms, just to stay encouraged. Don't let that stop you from doing what is right.
Yeah.
It can be a lonely journey, but just, I promise, you want to be on a path that God can bless. And if you're just going to, settle for mean friends or settle for whatever it takes to get your daughter to stay plugged into a certain group, whatever, if there's a bad dynamic in a group, and this, it's only going to get worse as they get older. It's not going to get better, and sometimes our girls have to go through lonely seasons to maybe get a reset or to to find friends that are more suited for them or more on the path that you want them to be on. But that's why your faith comes into play, because if you have that security in the Lord, you're willing to take that risk.
Yeah. It's, we're swimming upstream, really, as believers when it comes to living this life of kindness and virtue. And it's going against what's being thrown out in the world, right? Through, again, I hate to pick on social media, but just, the things that these kids are exposed to, we're swimming upstream.
Yeah. And we talked about this in previous podcasts, and it's hard because you're teaching your child to be kind, but you do have to teach them to be strong. And we just did the episode on assertive. Teach your daughter to be assertive and, to know, you got to know, she's got to know, yes, keep being kind, but know who is a safe person to be kind with. Yeah. And I see so many girls, especially the little Christian girls, get this so mixed up because I'm supposed to love everybody and be friends with everybody. I'm like, yes, but there are different levels of friendship. Yeah. I'm like, there are some people you love up close and personal, and there are other people you love at an arm's distance. Yep. And there are people, even in the adult world. I had an interaction a couple weeks ago. I'm thinking she's one of those people you just can't give her too much information. There are certain people.
Arm's length.
You get arm's length. You keep it very superficial.
Yeah.
You can talk about SEC football.
Yep.
You can talk about the weather. You can talk about what your spring break plans are. Like, very superficial. You cannot give them information, know, and you can still be kind. You're still friendly, but you just have to be smart. And they're not a safe person, and they don't deserve 100% access to your life or your personal details.
Yep.
And then there's some people that they're kind like you, and you've met your match, and those are the people you let in. Yeah. And it's not being mean, it's not being rude, it's being smart.
It's being discerning and wise.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, really listening, trusting your gut instinct. And so I think that's the key to being kind, because the world is going to tell our girls and our boys that it is a dog-eat-dog world, which it is. I mean, it is, and they've got to be ready for that. But you want to be able to handle hard realities without letting those hard realities harden you.
Yes.
And that's the hardest thing for us as humans, and teaching our children that.
And letting the Lord handle it. I mean, that's the thing, too.
Yes.
I talk a lot with my younger clients when I'm working with them about, again, like we were talking about, what do safe friends look like? What kind of raft do you want to be on, right?
Yes.
And just hearing the way that they describe safe friends, and then they describe the friends that they're actually on the raft with, not safe. And it helps them get this clarity of like, well, why am I here then? Right. Is this serving me? And we have to do that same assessment as moms, right?
Yes.
As women, in our friendship circles, in our, the people that we invest time with. And, it's just so important that we are clear about, how we build each other up, and that we're with people that aren't tearing us down, and that we're not tearing other people down.
Yeah. So give us some examples of girls, what they've realized as you ask them that question, like the type of friends that they feel safe with, like what are the qualities, and then also the raft that they're on, that they actually suddenly realize, well, this maybe isn't a safe place for me.
So safe friends cheer me on, right? They're not jealous of me. They encourage me, like when I do something big, they celebrate it. They're not threatened by it, right? The friends on the unsafe raft are threatened, right, by their successes. If they make the team and they, my client makes the team and the others don't, that's bad. They're not passive aggressive. They don't really use those words, right? But we know what that looks like, passive aggressive. They're just encouraging. They build each other up. They don't assume, right? They don't assume that if I didn't text them back right away that I'm angry at them, or that I, don't like them.
That's good.
They let me be who I am. Right? Like I can just be silly. I can be in a mood. They don't judge me. They don't take it personally. Right? And then over on that unsafe raft, it's just you have to watch your back.
Right.
Right. And a lot of times what's said is they talk about me behind my back. Right? Like I know that if I'm not present, they're going to be talking about me.
Yeah.
Right. And those safe friends don't talk about me behind my back unless it's just positive things.
Right. And the thing about those friendships, what you want to tell them is it's just, you're going to be insecure. You cannot have confidence when you're surrounded by the wrong people, because you're constantly doubting yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just want to be with a tribe, you know, whether you're 13 or you're 33 or you're 53, like you just want to be with a tribe that delights in you and cheers you on,
Yes.
right? And that celebrates you.
Right.
And that does not, again, going back to feeling threatened, right? Doesn't feel threatened. You know, my closest friends, you know, I think I've said this before on here probably, but I am horrible at keeping up with text messages. My closest friends know that if I don't text them back, that I'm not ghosting them.
Right.
Right? That I'm just,
they're not creating a story
I'm
in their
not
head about you.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just not on my phone because I try to limit my time on my phone. And so, you know, we need our girls to have that mindset too.
Yes, that's so good. Yeah, so parenting for the long term, teaching kindness for the long term.
Yeah.
And I do think, you know, at our age, it really does. You see that it kind of helps you make a lot of friends. You know, like most people by this age, they're done with the meanness. They're done with manipulation. They're over that. So the older your child gets, the more and more it'll be appreciated. I'm not saying that mean people won't still exist, or that we all don't have that mean side that can be brought out in us. But you know, we want people, and also to know that, you know, when looking for what raft or your child wants to be on, they want the encouraging friends. This is not to say that their friends never say something that's difficult. You know, this is, you know, a real friend. This helped me so much. A priest said one time, he's like, love wants what is best for a person long term. Yeah. And a real friend is going to want that. So, you know, if a girl is making bad decisions, the real friends, you know, just because it's a safe raft doesn't mean they're going to keep saying, oh, you're doing great, keep going, honey.
Yeah.
You
They'll
know,
speak the truth.
They'll speak the truth.
Yeah.
You know, Tim Keller has some quote about, like, a real friend is like a surgeon. Like, they'll only cut you to heal you.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes they'll try to speak the truth in love, but they're going to have those hard conversations. It doesn't mean you're always being a balcony friend. You know, I did a post about that. Like, a balcony friend doesn't mean you're always just the cheerleader. Like, there's another side to that friendship too. You're going to be honest too, and you're not just, you know, puffing somebody up with just false praise. Right. Especially when a hard conversation needs to be had, because a real friend wants what's best for you 20 or 30 years from now. Yeah. So, but they're going to do it in kindness, and they're going to do it in love.
And they're not afraid to lean in.
Yes.
Right? They're not afraid, because nobody really loves conflict. I mean, certain people do, but most people don't.
Right.
So too, but they're not afraid of it because you matter. Right. That's what you matter more than the awkwardness of the conversation.
Right. Yep. Okay, so second way to help your daughter, especially if she's kind and falling through the cracks, is just reminding her that your worth comes from the Lord and not from popularity or social invitations.
Yeah, and that's something that, goodness, cannot be emphasized enough over and over and over. You know, they're not valuable because of the clothes they wear, the shoes they have, the car they drive once they can drive. They're not valuable because they made a certain team or they hang out with the cool kids. They're valuable because they're his and because they're yours. And this goes to, you know, just emphasizing that unconditional love for them over the years. And again, making sure that our identity is not coming from their social status. Yes. Right? That our identity is not coming from the sports team they made, or the travel team that they're on, or the grades that they get in school, right? That they are simply fearfully and wonderfully made, and that is it, period. And when we can give them that freedom, it's a lot easier for them to sit on a raft of kind girls instead of figuring out how to get to the top of the pyramid.
Right. Yeah, because if you're finding your worth in your friend group or your boyfriend or whatever, then your confidence is based on something that can change overnight. Yeah. I mean, I talk about that in a liked book. I'm like, overnight, life can rip the carpet out from under you. Yeah. Okay, say you live in a great house, have designer clothes. Your dad could lose his job, and that's over, you know? Yeah. Say you're in this friend group. They can kick you out, or a new leader can come in. Like, anything that you're putting on that pedestal of your life that only God should be on that pedestal, something else you're making that false idol and finding your worth in that, you're building your confidence on shaky ground. Yes. But like you said, you know, when we teach our children, our daughters and our sons, find your worth in the Lord. Like, find your value there, even if you are stripped clean of everything, you know, stripped of everything that you think gives you worth. You'll know your dignity, and you're still a masterpiece of the Lord. You're going to know your worth through the Lord, and nothing can change that. And they I don't think they can hear that enough.
No. And I honestly, we can't hear that enough as women, you know, as moms. And, you know, as we can get in the comparison game or the perfectionistic game, it's, you know, reminding ourselves that that our worth doesn't come from our social circles or the neighborhood we live in or the car that we drive or, all of those things, that our worth, again, comes from him.
Yes. And, just a story that goes with that. A friend last year was telling me about her son. He was, our football star through middle school, just always a great athlete, all of that. And so going into high school, he was supposed to be kind of the lead quarterback, but then somebody transferred in and took that role. And so obviously, and then school was getting harder too. And so it was a lot of practice for him not to be playing first string. Sometimes he was second or third string. And so anyway, he ended up quitting football to focus on his grades and other things. And he was so worried because he was known as the great athlete. Like he'd always been known as that, and just really praised for that. But his mom she's just got a really deep faith, and she's a neat woman. And she's like, it was actually so freeing for him that he, after 6 months, he's like, Mom, my friends don't treat me any differently. And he was really shocked by it. But it was so freeing for him. Like, I thought he was so worried that he would lose that status, that he'd lose his friends, or people wouldn't look up to him or respect him like they had because he wasn't that star football player anymore. And I thought, what an amazing lesson to learn when you're in 9th or 10th grade versus when you're 40 or 50 years old. Like, that's going to serve him so well. And so even for us, as we're watching your daughter struggle or go through things, that, God can use that. Even when something that you loved or that they loved comes to an end, like, don't fear that. Like, God uses all of it.
Yeah.
And, say your daughter is kind and she's fallen through the cracks and she doesn't have the friendships you're hoping for, like, it's okay. Like, that can be the time she has extra time to read her Bible, to go to Young Life, to do these things she wouldn't normally do. Plus, at this point, her heart is open. She's searching. And sometimes people will look back and say that was their greatest period of growth and faith. And I'm like, when your child learns to rebuild their identity with Jesus as their rock, like, nothing can shake them after that. And then when they do find friends, they're going to be a better friend. They're not going to be so clingy and insecure. Like, they're going to be have that quiet confidence that you want in a friend.
Yes.
Because they're not relying on their friends to give them worth and to give them value. They found that somewhere else. And then it frees them to just go out there and love people like God is calling us to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, and so third way to help your daughter when a kind girl might be falling through the cracks is just to remember that kindness is a virtue and it's a character trait to celebrate and be grateful for. And this goes back to, I'm writing a new talk right now, raising confident kids, and I was asking one of my daughters the other day, like, what would you say, advice for parents wanting to raise confident kids? And she's like, I think just affirming qualities like kindness or being a good friend rather than making great grades or all the tangible achievements that we tend to praise our kids for is affirming those qualities. And I was like, yep, you're right on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because when we praise kids for their accomplishments, for their grades, for, the touchdown they scored, or the team that they made, we are praising things that they don't have control over. And so that gives them anxiety. Because it's like, well, what if all of a sudden, like, what if you've got a child, they've done great research on this, like even with gifted children, it's like when you praise their performance versus their grit, right, versus their effort, it causes them to not want to work as hard. Right, because then there's this fear that, well, what if I'm not as smart as I thought I was, or what if I don't do well on the test next time, then I might lose praise, right? Whereas when we praise kids for, like, I love how hard you studied and worked on that. I love how you gave it your all, at the game, right? That is going to motivate them to try harder next time.
That's good. I love that. I think that's the most important thing, especially as our kids grow up. Like, moms always want to know, how do I stay connected? I'm like, you stay connected by obviously loving them, but also giving good advice.
Yeah.
And being a good life coach and a good mentor. And the way to do that is the way you're framing events for them.
Yes.
You are so many times are having to reframe a negative situation into, like, look at this. Like, look at this big picture. And we've got to be, like you said, in an emotionally and spiritually healthy place.
Yeah.
To be able to do that and to know what really matters and what is giving our child worth and what's giving us worth.
Well, and that's where, we talk about, cheering our children on for who they are, not who we need them to be. And, again, it's like if we have an agenda or we need them to be in a certain crowd or we need them to, make a certain team, then then we're not able to really carry them where they need to go, and celebrate exactly who God wanted them to be. You know, like He created them specifically. And I use this story a lot. My husband Dave, he played football in college. He was in the Navy, went to the Naval Academy, played football for Navy. If you saw him, he looks like Mr. Clean.
He does.
Meets the Rock. Like he's just a big man, right?
I would want him to be my protector. That is for sure.
and our son Luke came out, and he just didn't really have any interest in football, and it just wasn't his thing. And he tried it, but he didn't love it. You know, he just didn't care to put the effort in. He ended up playing lacrosse, loved that. But I just praise Dave all the time, because Dave could have needed Luke to play football.
That's
right?
good.
He could have needed him to relive his story and change it or make it better or live vicariously through him. But instead, he let him be who he needed to be. He celebrated who Luke is.
Yes. And don't you think, like, that's happened to me so many times just in parenting, and if you're open to it, like, okay, if you look at your child, like, they're just a little mystery box, and it's my job to kind of unlock this mystery, you know, like, this is being curious about them. Like, okay, I loved this sport, but I don't think this is for them. But so many things that my daughters have been in, like maybe Ella, like baking cakes. I'm like, that came from so out of the blue. She started baking cakes during COVID and made these, or like, I'm like, where did this I guess come it's from? The Greek genes in you, because it's, you know, I burn toast. Like, I can't even cook. And so, but it's been so fun. Like, the things that I love cheering my girls on for the most are the qualities that I don't have and the gifts that I don't have. And it's so fun to think, okay, well, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole investigating, you know, researching how I can help them in this pursuit, that they're this dream or this hobby of theirs, like just embracing it, whether it is baking cakes or whether it is playing chess, or sometimes, you know, God's going to surprise us in the craziest way, what our child loves to do. And if we're open to it, instead of trying to put them into this, you know, vision of what we think their life should look like, no, where's God leading them and what gifts has He given them? It's fun and exciting for us, because like Dave, I mean, he's gotten to go in a whole new direction. And didn't you say that Luke loves aviation?
Yeah.
And that's something they do have in common. But.
And who knew, right? But that's such a great point, because, you know, Dave is a pilot, and and he never pushed Luke into that. He never assumed Luke would want to follow in his footsteps. And then one day, his senior year, Luke's like, I think I might want to fly, you know?
That's awesome.
But that's because, you know, he had the freedom to do it. And I think if Dave had pushed him into that, he probably wouldn't have.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I have this story, too, even with my daughter. It's a little bit off the subject, but it makes me think of Marie Claire. She's the only daughter of mine who's, like, kept with her activity sport through senior year. She's a Dorian, loves to dance. I mean, like, this was a little girl who danced around the house when she was 2 or 3 years old. Like, she was always twirling. And then it was in 6th grade, and in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to get her in with this dance coach that everybody uses to make the junior high dance team. Like, this is her track. And then she comes home, she's like, I want to quit dance. And I'm like, what? It was so out of the blue, but she just wanted to quit. And I was bribing her with all these things. I'm like, well, your friends are doing this little, 3-day intensive in New York this summer. Do you want to go do that? She would, I could not convince her. And there was a part of me that wanted to keep going because she was so good at it and she was so talented. And I'm thinking, she cannot waste this gift. But I knew something my heart told me. I was like, if you push it, she may never, ever go back to it. Like, this is not your life.
Yeah.
And in part of me, as I sat there and just reflected on it, I realized it was me wanting her to have a certain track. And it was like my insecurity thinking she needed that going into the junior high. She needed her place. And so it was really hard for me. And so, but I was like, okay, God, I'm just going to trust you. So I was like, I want you to do something. I don't care what it is, but you just, look for something. So she did volleyball. She did that her fall of 6th grade year. So then I fall in love with volleyball. I'm like, this is so fun. I'm like, and so of course I'm like, well, we didn't sign you up with a coach. Do you want to try out for the volleyball team? No, mom. Oh, So it was me having to just like tone it down and just trust. Anyway, fast forward a few months. She's still not dancing. I'm assuming that chapter of her life is over.
Closed.
It is a month before dance tryouts. I remember it was Martin Luther King holiday weekend. She was hanging out with some friends, and she texts me, hey, Mom, I'm talking to some friends right now, and, they're telling me I should try out for dance team. So I think I do want to try out. And I'm like, girl, I'm thinking, you're behind. Everybody's been practicing for months. And so I'm like, okay, we'll do what we can do. Anyway, it was her friend Camille, who now is going to be her college roommate in Auburn next year. She's just a sweet, lifelong friend. But anyway, I'm like, well, we have Camille to thank. And I'm like, it could not have come from me, you know. So anyway, she started dancing again and has not looked back. She loved it. But if I had pushed it, during that time, she would not be doing what she's doing now. And it's just been the best journey. And it had to come from somebody beside me.
Yeah.
And I just share that as an example of you never know how God's going to work. But when we trust that his plan for our child is better than our plan, even if they're in a season, like she was in that season of like not having her thing or not having her path. And it was my insecurity that I was wanting to parent out of.
Yeah.
That sometimes we just have to save ourselves from ourselves.
Yeah.
And trust God and trust, ask for discernment and just trust that he's working even when it looks like maybe he's not.
Yeah, and when our kids come home and they're struggling with, let's just say, being left out, falling through the cracks, exclusion, our job is to just sit on the bench with them, to just be present, to listen, to reflect, to validate. We don't have to solve it. And in fact, when we solve it, we get in the way, just kind of like you're saying. Like, it's like you wanted to solve it, but you knew I need to just sit back. These kids, they know, they're resourceful. They know what they need, but what they really need from us is just validation and support. They don't need us to get in and to muddy it up. I mean, there are times, and you'll know when you need to step in and solving needs to happen. But I think we clip their wings when we try and fix it for them.
Yes.
And sometimes, like I've said a few times now, is we can feel like they're getting left out, maybe more than they feel like they're getting left out.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And we mentioned our retreat at the beginning of this episode, and that's one thing we're really going to focus on our retreat for moms with impact, coming October 25th and 26th to Nashville. But, it's really the theme that we really keep going back to is that we can't control what's happening outside of our homes, but we can control what's happening inside of our homes. And, if your daughter or your son if they are kind, they're doing the right things, but yet it's not paying off socially, like, we can't control what's happening with their peers, but you can control the love you're bringing into their life. You can control the love you're bringing into your house. And so the way that we're framing those rejections or those lonely seasons has such an impact on their resilience to those seasons. And just recently, I'm thinking of the story because I wrote about it recently in the new book I'm working on. But I have a friend that I think it was last year, her daughter was in middle school, had some drama going on with her friend group, and just decided that she was not going to go. They weren't going to go trick-or-treating that year. So anyway, the mom does what moms do, like, okay, we'll create a fun family night at home. And so she did that, and she's like, everything was great until the mom went to the neighbor's house for about 10 minutes to go get something. Comes back, her daughter is bawling, crying. And it turned out during that, of course, it's when her mom was not there.
There's 10 minutes.
10 minutes. The 10 minutes you relax, right? She comes back. While the mom and dad were gone, the friends came by the house trick-or-treating. They all went trick-or-treating dressed up together without her to her house, which is obviously deliberately mean.
Yes.
Mean. So anyway, the daughter obviously held it together long enough to give them candy to her friends, former friends, and then burst into tears as soon as she shut the door. And, the mom had a choice at that point. Obviously, you can be mad. Obviously, any of us would be upset. We'd be mad, but obviously you can go text the moms of those girls, which a lot of moms do, immediately act on that anger. That's what she was tempted to do. But what she decided to do was like, you know what? We're going to make this a fun Halloween. And so she's like, I called my parents. I called my sister. I called some of my best friends. And they all came over to our house. And it was like our mission to just make her laugh and make her smile. And obviously, This girl, I'm sure she went to bed, maybe still crying in bed that night. She still had that pain in her heart, but she felt loved, during that set. Like you said, she felt people sitting on the bench with her. Yeah. And sometimes that's all we can do, and that's enough. And those are the moments that our kids are going to remember. When we leave this earth and they're remembering their core memories of those moms, that's the kind of thing that's going to stick with them. They will one day be able to laugh about, when I was in 7th grade.
Remember that Halloween?
Yeah, I mean, it's not funny at the time, but you get older, you get your real friends, you know who you are, you laugh about those situations, and they're going to remember, that's what my mom did for me, and then they're going to think, wow, that must have took a lot out of her to not call those other moms, to not react, to not, do those things, just act on those knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah, we set the tone. We don't realize the power that we have as parents when we take those moments and we are able to just be in there and be with them and just validate their feelings but not freak out over it.
That's
right?
so good.
And
Yes.
not go, I can't believe them. They are the worst friends in the world. How dare they, right? Because now all of a sudden our child's having to manage our feelings too.
Right.
Right.
And like we go back to, it is our job as moms to be the bigger, stronger, calmer, and
kinder, wiser.
one.
Yep.
Kinder, wiser
Yep.
one.
Yep. Absolutely.
And this, sometimes, just side note moms, that sometimes that means being strong for your child. But now, if you and your husband are in the car or you're
Yes.
in the privacy,
Let it out.
Cuss, like you need to let out some words. If you
Yes.
need to vent and be really raw, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Have
your people.
Have your people.
Yeah.
Have your best friend. Have your therapist. Whoever. Like you got to have the people that you can vent to and be honest. But when you're with your child and you're guiding your daughter, your son through a rejection or a lonely season, like be strong for them.
They
don't,
need us.
Don't make them manage our emotions.
Yeah.
And that's something that really comes with practice. We got to get it wrong sometimes to realize that does not go.
No,
that doesn't go well.
We can mess it up. I always say we can mess it up we can mess it up 70% of the time. We only have to get it right 30% of the time. So that we are not asking you to walk on water and be perfect.
Right.
I certainly am not. but we do need to be mindful that when we are emoting over our children, we are putting them in that difficult position. So
yes, definitely. So in summary, Kim, let's just talk about, when your daughter is going through a lonely season or your son is going through a lonely season, just keep celebrating the kindness that God has put in their heart.
Yeah.
And, just know that you can't control other people, but they can control their response to the situation. And, kind people are going to attract kind friends. It may not happen immediately. It may not happen in middle school, but you stay on that path. And as people mature and grow up, a lot of people will decide that's the number one quality they want in a friend. And I've seen this time and time again. When I have chosen kind friends and I put them in the same room together, they always get along. It's so beautiful. Like they're gonna just mesh.
It's
like,
life-giving.
It is life-giving. And that is possible. There's this mindset that girls are mean and women are mean. And yes, there are a lot of mean people out there. We all have that ability to be mean. We all have a mean side that people can bring out of us. But we want to be around people that bring out our best, that bring out our kind side. And we want to be creating that culture for our children too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so moms, hang in there. Know that you can't go wrong doing what's right. And just teaching your daughter to be kind and to be strong and to become the friend that she wants to be. And when she is going through a lonely season, just surround her with love. And like I said, that could be a young life leader. It could be grandparents. It could be a special coach or a special teacher. It could be you, your husband, a favorite aunt. There are so many different ways to surround her with love, and it doesn't have to be a friend group of 20 people. It could be one or two key people. And then when she is sad, you can't solve it. You can't fix it. You can't make her have this magical friend group overnight, but you can just walk through those hard times with her and just love her through it and just keep praying for God to bring good friends into her life. Yeah. Okay. Kim, thanks so much again for this episode. I know it's a common heartache in a lot of moms' hearts.
It is, but we're cheering you on, and it is not for the faint of heart. And we just wish everybody the best through this season.
Yes. Thanks again for listening, and thank you, Kim, for coming on. Friends, thank you for tuning in today. I am so grateful to have you here. And if you enjoyed this show, please subscribe wherever you listen and leave a ratings or review so that other people can find these messages too. For links to my books, my social media, and my new community on Substack, check out the show links. Thanks again for your support, and have a great day.